Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about my second book, Cruelty. In my first book, Brainwashing, I talked about this interesting psychological phenomenon whereby people could take other people and apparently change their minds. That was done mostly, if you look at the historical context, with extreme force, extreme coercion. It was basically a form of psychological and sometimes physical torture. So the obvious question that arises from that is, where does this urge to harm other people come from? What's going on there? And the key message of Cruelty, which is a hugely controversial and not very popular message, is that we can understand how those urges arise. There are causes. And I'll spell that out a bit because it's a really important message, and it's, as I've said, a very unpopular one. But the message is this: evil, the wickedness that makes us tend to see certain people as just beyond the pale, is not an incomprehensible phenomenon. It is something that you can understand, and you can understand it scientifically, and if you can understand it, you can prevent it, in principle at least. That's really important because when we see something extreme, when we see some extreme form of cruelty, we tend to just back off and seal it away and put it in a moral category marked abomination, do not touch. Now that technique is an old moral defence. It protects us, it makes us feel better about ourselves by distinguishing us from the evildoer. And it has worked pretty much extremely badly for the last couple of how many ever centuries, millennia you want to talk about. We've had this technique, we've evolved it in a sense. There are indications that you can see similar behaviour in our evolutionary cousins. So it's an old defence system, but it doesn't work very well. We still have cruelty. Now, some people will argue that, our societies are much less violent than they were, and for example, Steven Pinker has made this argument, and that we're much more civilised and decent, and we're progressing towards being even more so. That's all fine, but there is still a huge amount of cruelty, even in a decent liberal society like Britain. For example, you have domestic violence, you have child abuse. We're currently reeling from our own scandal of child abuse, but that is only one of many such instances that are going on. You have cruelty to animals, and you have a good deal of low-level workplace bullying, discrimination, etc., 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 all of which is a form of cruelty. Now, we don't have people going around massacring each other on the streets as a general rule. Great. But that does not mean we do not have cruelty. We do. Okay? So although this is a problem whose forms and expressions may have changed, it's still a problem. Moreover, there are plenty of areas in the world where you are still getting people who are committing severe, violent, physical crimes, sometimes with extreme cruelty, what looks like pure sadism. Just saying, this is horrible, this is evil, and putting it away in a box does not help. We need to understand it. And if we can understand it, then maybe we can see what factors are driving people to behave in that way. Now, the problem with that is that means you have to remind yourself that these people, even the most evil of them, are still human beings with the same complicated sets of beliefs and desires and goals that we all have. And that's really challenging to do, because that suggests that they're not so different from you after all, and so you get into terrible discomfort, if you like, thinking about that. And certainly I found when writing Cruelty that it was an incredibly uncomfortable book to write, precisely for that reason. You have to deal with such horrors. But nonetheless, if you can bring yourself to look at it in that way, perhaps there is the hope that one day we will be able to reduce cruelty by changing the factors that drive it. And we already know quite a lot about what those factors are.